So let's look at what tissue looks like from different parts of an organism. Because the best way to really be able to identify tissue is looking at it in some sort of context. So this is what the syllabus objective says. You need to be able to use a light microscope or photographs to be able to view tissue from the respiratory, circulatory, excretory, digestive and or plant system. So we're going to do each one of those. Remembering, of course, that we've got 4 different types of tissue. We've got connective tissue, epithelial tissue, muscular tissue, and neural tissue. So here we're looking at specifically at the trachea, so part of the respiratory system, but the part of the respiratory system involved in moving the gases in and out of the lungs. So we've got the lumen, of course, is the actual passage of the trachea where the gases go back and forth. So we know that it's the epithelial tissue that is in sheets that covers the outer and inner surfaces of, say, the human organism. So we're expecting to see epithelium here, and we certainly do. So they're the columns of epithelium, and they've got the cilia, so the specialized hair-like projections that move the mucus up into the throat. These also secrete mucus as well. Now, below the epithelium, we have some connective tissue, and it's loose connective tissue. It's always underneath the epithelium. And then after that specifically, we have got hyaline cartilage, and so that's a specific type of fibrous connective tissue, and that's what forms the rings of the cartilaginous rings of the trachea to stop the trachea from collapsing when we breathe in. Okay, so this is tissue from the trachea. Now down into the lungs, specifically the alveolus, where gas exchange occurs. We see the lumen here, and we can see that so the white here is where we've got the gas, and you can see that there's a large amount of it is gas, and you can see that the pink is our epithelial tissue, and it's very, very thin. It needs to be thin for gas exchange to occur. It's in these circles here because that's the alveoli, the air sacs. And so you can see that they're very thin. It's wrapped around with blood vessels here for the gas exchange to occur. And so the main thing that we can see here is epithelial tissue. There will obviously be connective tissue as well, sort of holding it together. In the circulatory system, so there's 2 things I want you to have a look at here. First of all, we've got the arteries and the veins. So we know that arteries are thicker because they have to withstand a larger pressure. And so that thickness is largely with this muscle, this smooth muscle. And this is a good diagram here to be able to understand what smooth muscle actually looks like. It's not striated like cardiac and skeletal muscle. It's actually more in these particular shapes here, these elliptical sort of shapes. And so when they contract in a circular type movement and close the artery. So we use it for arteries and veins, but obviously for capillaries as well. Vasodilation is relaxing of that smooth muscle. Vasoconstriction is constricting or contracting of that smooth muscle to reduce the size of the lumen and control the amount of blood that flows. So we can see smooth muscle in veins and arteries, and we can see cardiac muscle in the heart. And so cardiac muscle is striated, but it's a bit harder to tell. What we can do, we can tell the difference between cardiac muscle and skeletal muscle by cardiac muscle tends to be more branched. So you can see these branches here. If we see those, we know that's the cardiac muscle. And we can see that these dark organelles are in mitochondria as well, because cardiac muscle, or all muscle, is highly energetic. So if you have a look at the excretory system, again, this is from the kidney. Yeah, so this is the excretory system, and this is the kidney, and we're going to learn more about how the kidney is involved in filtration of urine a little bit later. But I want you to see that we've got lots of cells tightly packed. So based on that, given that it's the kidney and it's involved in excretion, we can assume that it's not muscular tissue. The fact that it's packed together like this suggests to us that it is epithelial tissue predominantly, and so we can see there will also be connective tissue, holding everything together in the kidney, but this is predominantly epithelial tissue. And in the digestive system, this is in the small intestine, and this is the lumen of the small intestine here. We can see we've got this layer, this sheet of columns tightly packed together. Given that we're at the lining of the small intestine, we know that this is epithelial tissue, and we've got this brush border that has this microvilli, which is a hair-like projection to increase surface area and to sort of catch the nutrients as they go by. And we're going to have underneath we're going to have our loose connective tissue holding it together. So I guess the take-home message here is with these specific systems, they have a specific function, so therefore the cells and the tissue have specific structures. So we see different tissue types involved, but obviously also tissues work together. So there's not just one tissue in one organ. We see epithelial and then connective, etc. And of course, if we looked at the stomach, we would see smooth muscle as well. And of course, we're also going to see neural tissue as well, because this is innervated by the neural system as well. So in the esophagus here, we've got flat epithelial cells that form the surface. So there's an edge, and this is the lumen here, and then under this, again, we're going to probably have our loose connective tissue. So if we know the system we're looking at, and we know where we're going to find certain types of tissue, then it's actually not too hard. Now, of course, don't forget it's not just about animals, it's also plants. So this here is a cross-section of a stem, and this is the vascular bundle. So it's the xylem and the phloem, and in fact the phloem is this part here on the outside, and then the xylem is here on the inside, and each one of these is a vascular bundle, or the vascular system of a plant. And this here is the underside of a leaf, and we can see here on the lower epidermis we have these things called guard cells that control a hole called the stoma. So again, we've got very specialized cells and tissue in the plant where they have specific functions.